Hey guys, tonight we slip into the silent, candle-lit corridors of a medieval monastery. Stone walls damp with age, shadows long and flickering, and the faint scent of sheep wool and tallow lingering in the cold air. Outside, the wind rattles wooden shutters, and inside, a dozen robed figures shuffle quietly on worn flagstones, whispering prayers in Latin and side-eyeing a hunk of cheese. Yes, cheese. Not just any cheese, though. This one's slightly waxy, smells a bit like someone's old sandals, and for some reason it's never, ever eaten on Wednesdays. You see it sitting alone on the pantry shelf, cloaked in suspicion. Every monk here seems to fear it, especially on that one midweek day, as if it might grow legs and recite heresy. You're in the 13th century now, and while most of the world is dealing with plagues, crusades, and very questionable bathing habits, you've found yourself embroiled in something arguably more mysterious, a monastic aversion to dairy that has somehow taken on biblical proportions. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm curious who else is up at this weird hour. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before sunrise, roused by the tolling of a dull iron bell that echoes like a summons from the afterlife. It's Lauds, one of 7 daily prayer services, and you're already late. You shuffle out of your straw-filled cot, wrap a coarse woolen robe around your shivering frame, and follow the scent of cold incense toward the chapel. On your way, you pass the kitchen. A faint glimmer of candlelight spills from beneath the door, and inside, you catch a glimpse of Brother Hugh muttering to himself while inspecting something round and cloth-wrapped. Cheese. Again. You wouldn't think it strange, except that this is the 3rd morning in a row you've caught someone peeking in on the dairy stores before prayers. It wouldn't be a big deal, except today is Wednesday. You join the other monks in the chapel. No one speaks. Not even a cough or shuffle breaks the silence, save for the slight creak of ancient knees bending in unison. The prayers drone on in perfect rhythm. Your thoughts drift to the cheese. Why does it matter? Why did Brother Hugh glance over his shoulder like a guilty child stealing sweets? The day unspools in its usual way. Scripture readings, silent meals, labor in the fields. But something is off. There's a tension in the air. The kitchen is closed all afternoon. The dining hall smells faintly of vinegar and secrecy. You overhear Brother Philip mutter, "Better hungry than curd cursed," before crossing himself 3 times. As the sun sets, golden light filters through the narrow stained glass windows, splashing your dinner tray with crimson and violet. You line up for supper, boiled roots and dense rye bread. No cheese, not even a sliver. Which is odd because cheese is usually the highlight of the week, especially on Wednesdays. Or was. Remember the last time, someone whispers behind you. Father Benedict spent the night howling like St. Anthony in the desert. You pretend not to hear. Historians still argue whether the fear of cheese among monks had any official ecclesiastical basis. No papal bull condemned dairy on a Wednesday, and no holy text warned of mozzarella's moral decay. But what's clear is that in some isolated communities, like the one you're standing in, cheese came to represent something far more dangerous than spoiled milk. You sneak into the pantry after supper, curiosity chewing at your better judgment. There it is, A half-wheel of what might be cheddar, although it's hard to tell in the dim candlelight. It sits alone, covered in a thin muslin cloth like a relic no one dares disturb. You reach for it, hesitating only when the air seems to grow heavier. Behind you, someone coughs. You nearly drop the candle. It's Brother Oswald. He stares at the cheese, then at you. "Don't," he says softly. "Not on a Wednesday." You blink. "Why not?" He pauses. "Because that's when it remembers." He walks away before you can ask what it is. Quirky? Absolutely. But remember, in a world where demons were blamed for spoiled grain and sneezes were feared signs of possession, it's not that wild to believe a chunk of aged dairy could carry a curse, or at least indigestion so powerful it felt like divine punishment. As you lie in your cold little cot, blanket scratchy and thoughts spiraling, you wonder, did a monk once choke on a particularly hard rind and declare it the devil's work? Was cheese simply too indulgent, too sensuous for the rigid discipline of cloistered life? Or was there something else, something they didn't write down in the illuminated manuscripts? Your eyes begin to close, your breath slows, and you can almost hear the wind outside morph into whispered words. Not on a Wednesday. The next morning, you wake to the same tolling bell, but something feels different. There's a weight in the air, and not just from the lingering smell of boiled cabbage. You stretch, yawn, and step out into the drafty hallway, half expecting to see Brother Oswald waiting with more cryptic cheese prophecies. But no, just the usual procession of sleepy monks shuffling toward the chapel like penitents in a never-ending march of matins. You decide to take a detour instead of following the crowd. You slip down the narrow corridor that leads to the scriptorium, where books are copied, secrets whispered, and rules recorded. It's here, among stacks of parchment and ink that smells like dried beetles, that you begin your investigation, because you're no longer just a visitor in this abbey. You're a pilgrim on a mission to uncover the truth about this odd, dairy-based superstition. At the heart of every monastic community in medieval Europe lies the rule of Saint Benedict, a 6th century guidebook that outlines everything from prayer times to how many hours of sleep you're allowed. Spoiler, not many. It was supposed to instill discipline, humility, and a lot of hard labor. The rule is clear on fasting, obedience, and silence, but it says nothing about cheese on Wednesdays. That's your first clue. You flip through a tattered copy of the rule, squinting at the Latin that's been smudged by centuries of oily fingertips. There are sections on chastity, communal eating, and even how much wine a monk can drink, a surprising amount, honestly. But the dairy section is suspiciously vague, and that's when you start to notice something else. Scribbled in the margins of several pages are strange notes. One reads, "Avoid dairy on the 4th day." Another says simply, "Do not tempt the stomach or the soul." These notes weren't part of the original text. They were added later, quietly, as if someone wanted to pass on a warning without making it too official, like a whisper encoded in ink. You hear footsteps approaching and quickly tuck the book back into the shelf. It's Brother Edmund, the scriptorium's keeper. His face is pale and his hands ink-stained. "You shouldn't be in here without a reason," he says, eyeing you with a mixture of suspicion and mild boredom. "I'm looking for additions to the rule," you offer, which is about as vague as it gets. He raises an eyebrow. "The rule needs no additions, except when it does." That sounds like something a monk would say right before banishing you to the root cellar for 3 weeks. But instead, he sighs and gestures to a smaller, locked cabinet. Some things aren't written in the rule because they're meant to be felt, he murmurs, especially on Wednesdays. Inside the cabinet are several scrolls, all unsigned, all anonymously penned. Some describe dreams. Others contain lists of foods to be avoided on days of testing. And this one makes you pause, features a drawing of a monk lying flat on the ground, eyes wide, stomach bloated, a small wedge of cheese perched on his chest like a dairy-based tombstone. The caption reads, "Temptation swells in the belly and breaks the soul." You've heard rumors about food being tied to sin. It's not a new idea. In medieval times, gluttony was one of the 7 deadly sins. Rich foods, even simple ones like cheese, were thought to distract from divine contemplation. Some monks went as far as eating only tasteless gruel for years to weaken their attachment to earthly pleasures. But cheese, specifically on Wednesdays? That's oddly specific. Historians still argue whether these cheese bans were based on real incidents, like a monk's unfortunate gastrointestinal episode during Vespers, or if they emerged as metaphors for indulgence at midweek when discipline was at its lowest. Some even speculate it might have been symbolic, a reminder that even humble things can become temptations if improperly timed. Back in the main hall, you sit down for lunch. Today's menu: lentils and something that might be turnip, but also might be candle wax. The cheese is conspicuously absent again. You glance around. Nobody's talking. And then, quietly, Brother Gerald leans over. "Do you know why it started?" he asks. You shake your head. Because a brother once fasted for 3 days, then broke it with cheese on a Wednesday. They say he saw demons in the firelight that night, and ever since, we've avoided it. It's not in the rule, he says, tapping the table with a bony finger. But we all know. You nod slowly, unsure whether he believes what he's saying, or if he just enjoys the drama of it all. But then he adds, almost absently, "Better not to test the 4th day. It listens." You want to laugh, but your stomach makes a small, ominous gurgle. By sunset, you've grown increasingly uneasy. Not afraid exactly, just off-kilter, like a chair with one leg shorter than the others. You wander the cloisters, noticing little things you hadn't before. How the cheese knives are all locked away in a high cupboard. How the pantry door creaks with a sound like distant chanting. How every Wednesday, the monks take special care to keep the food plain, bland, and safe. As you head to bed, your thoughts swirl with unanswered questions. Why Wednesday? Why cheese? Why does everyone treat this like it's normal? You lie down, pull your blanket tight, and try to shake the feeling that something is watching you. Not a person, not even a creature, just a presence. A presence that smells faintly of Gouda. You wake before the bell this time, startled by a dream you can't quite recall. There had been firelight, definitely, chanting too. And at the center of it all, a glowing wheel of cheese, radiant, spinning slowly, whispering things you're glad you can't remember. You sit up, heart thudding like the abbey's great drum used on feast days, and wonder if this monastery is finally getting to you. Still, you're not the only one with shadows under your eyes at breakfast. Brother Thomas keeps glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting judgment, or maybe indigestion, to strike him down. Brother Gerald winces with every bite of his crusty bread, as though it's laced with guilt instead of caraway seeds. The air feels thick with unsaid things. You make your way back to the pantry under the pretense of needing more salt. The kitchen is empty, but there's a wooden bowl on the prep table with a suspicious smear of what looks like curdled cream. Sitting beside it is a small, partially eaten wedge of something pale and crumbly. You sniff it. Definitely dairy. And definitely not supposed to be here on a Thursday morning. You stare at it, half expecting it to twitch. Then a voice behind you. We buried Brother Alaric's robe yesterday. You spin. Brother Hugh stands in the doorway, face solemn. He didn't die, Hugh continues. He just had an episode. After the cheese, we decided it was best to burn the robe and start fresh. An episode? Hugh nods, stepping closer. Cried during Compline, then tried to exorcise the cow in the barn. Said its eyes were too knowing. You blink. Did he eat cheese on Wednesday? 2 bites. Hugh says grimly. Brie. You suddenly don't feel very hungry. It turns out that cheese in medieval monasteries wasn't just food. It was a theological minefield. See, monks followed strict fasting rules, but dairy occupied a gray zone. Some orders considered cheese permissible on certain fast days, while others shunned it completely. It wasn't just about calories. Cheese, like wine or richly spiced meat, was seen as a gateway to indulgence. But things got weirder when monks began reporting. Side effects. Not of the medical kind, though there was that too. Let's be real. Refrigeration wasn't exactly a thing. And cheese aged in damp cellars sometimes hosted more than just penicillin. No, the real fear was spiritual. Monks whispered that cheese clouded the mind, stirred lustful dreams, and weakened resolve. It made you think too much about your stomach, and by extension, other appetites. And if those stirred during a sacred day like Wednesday, well, you were in trouble. Historians still argue whether this belief had any consistent theological backing, you recall from a lecture long ago, or whether it was just the result of foodborne hallucinations and a lot of guilt. And guilt in a monastery is as common as prayer. You return to the cloister garden, where a group of monks are pulling weeds in contemplative silence. You join them, needing to ground yourself. The rhythm helps. Pull, toss, kneel, repeat. But then, Brother Philip breaks the quiet. My cousin was a monk in Canterbury, he says softly. They had a similar tradition. 1 bite of cheese on Wednesday, and they'd make you sleep in the ossuary. You shiver. The ossuary is where they store the bones. Didn't happen often, he adds. Just when someone got too comfortable. It's the 3rd time someone has referred to comfort like it's a sin. You begin to wonder, maybe that's the real issue. Cheese isn't evil. It's just pleasant. And in a place where discipline is everything, pleasant things are suspect. You spend the afternoon in the library, poring through more marginalia, those little side notes monks would add when the margins were too tempting to ignore. You find several entries that feel relevant. One is a doodle of a wheel of cheese with little legs, running away from a monk who's holding a cross. Another says, "Beware the softness of flesh and rind alike." A bit dramatic, sure. But then monks did have a flair for metaphor. You also come across a fragment of a sermon that warns against midweek indulgences, which open doors not easily shut. Was it metaphorical? Or did they mean literal demonic doors? You're still mulling it over when the bell rings for supper. Tonight, blessedly, the menu includes a thin broth, slightly moldy apples, and for the first time in days, cheese. It's Monday, and apparently, the coast is clear. You watch your fellow monks cautiously. They all eye the platter like it might explode. A few brave souls take small slices. Brother Gerald sniffs his and murmurs what sounds like a blessing, though it might also be an apology. You take a piece yourself. It's hard, tangy, and surprisingly tasty. You chew slowly. You wait. Nothing happens. You swallow. Still fine. You take another bite. Still. Then Brother Edmund suddenly bolts upright, clutching his stomach. Gas? Panic? Divine punishment? He runs from the room. No one follows. The rest of the meal continues in silence. You finish your cheese with mixed feelings, part victory, part dread. Was this it? A coincidence? Or had you just dodged something supernatural? That night, your dreams are cheese-free. At least, you think they are. But when you wake up, there's a wedge of cheddar sitting on the windowsill above your bed. You did not put it there. You sit up in bed, blinking at the cheddar like it might blink back. Morning light spills over the stone windowsill, illuminating the wedge in a buttery halo that feels deeply inappropriate. You look around. No monks lurking, no cheese-loving ghosts. Just you, your increasingly confused brain, and this unsolicited dairy offering. Is it a prank? A warning? An invitation? You pick it up. It's still cool, which means it hasn't been sitting there long. No bite marks, no strange symbols carved into the rind. It smells faintly of nutmeg and worry. You glance at the door, then tuck the cheese under your pillow. If anyone asks, you'll say it was a relic of Saint Fromage, patron of confused monks and night cheese. At breakfast, nobody mentions the incident with Brother Edmund. It's as if he never existed. His place at the table is gone, his cup removed. You overhear Brother Hugh telling another monk, "Sometimes the stomach leads the soul astray. Best we forget." That's monastery speak for, we're just gonna memory hole that entire gastrointestinal meltdown. But you're not ready to forget. Instead, you corner Brother Matthew in the herb garden. He's a novice, only recently shaved bald and still flinching every time someone says, "obedience." You ask him if he's heard of any cheese-related phenomena. He pales. You mean like the melting? The what? The thing that happened last year, he whispers. On a Wednesday, they served a soft cheese. Brother Isaac ate it. Later they found his sandals stuck to the ceiling beams, still warm, like something lifted him. You squint. Lifted him? Well, Matthew says, scratching his head. Maybe he jumped. Or maybe the Lord was testing the insulation. You can't tell if he's joking or trying to forget something traumatic. Either way, the phrase melting incident now lives rent-free in your brain. You return to your investigation with renewed interest. In the archives, buried beneath a stack of accounts ledgers and a few weirdly poetic recipes for nettle soup, you discover a sealed letter, waxed shut with the abbey's crest, but clearly old. Edges browned, the parchment curled like it's resisting the memory inside. You crack the seal. It's written in a surprisingly shaky hand. To whomever reads this, if it is Wednesday, close this at once. If not, heed this. I have seen the truth. Cheese is not cursed. It is invited. By us. With every indulgent bite, we open ourselves, not to demons, but to something older. hungrier. It does not care for our prayers, only our softness. It watches the fourth day closely, because that's when we forget to be careful. That's when we believe we're safe. Chilling stuff, but also a little theatrical. You tuck the letter into your robe and go outside for some fresh air, only to find a small group of monks standing silently around the well. They look like they're performing a vigil, but when you approach, Brother Gerald whispers, "Someone dropped a wheel of cheese down there." You peer into the dark shaft. Sure enough, floating just above the water is a slowly dissolving round of what looks like sheep's milk pecorino. "Why is it there?" you ask. "To appease it," Gerald says, dead serious. "You think we fast for discipline? Number, we fast so it won't notice us." You decide to keep your cheddar pillow pet a secret. Midday brings a lecture in the chapter house about humility, followed by a communal reading of psalms. It's soothing in the way Gregorian chanting always is, like being slowly wrapped in velvet and dipped in lavender tea. But your mind keeps drifting back to the cheese. Why Wednesday? Well, the fourth day of the week had symbolic significance in monastic life. Wednesday marked the midpoint, the hinge day between Sunday's renewal and Saturday's penitence. It was a day of spiritual vigilance, often associated with betrayal. Judas was said to have conspired against Christ on a Wednesday. A good day to be cautious, a bad day for brie. Historians still argue whether this symbolism had any impact on dietary rules or whether it's one of those patterns we spot in hindsight, like how everyone thinks full moons cause mischief, but forgets all the untold full moons where nothing happens. The funny thing is, not every monastery feared cheese. Some celebrated it. The Cistercians had entire treatises on proper aging techniques. There's even a record of a monk in France who produced so much cheese his abbey sold it to the king. But then again, that monk was later excommunicated for greed and culinary vanity, so maybe not the best role model. Back in your cell that evening, you think about comfort again. Cheese is comfort, its softness in a world of stone and silence, its flavor in a life devoted to blandness. Maybe that's what made it dangerous. Not demons, not curses, just distraction, a reminder of pleasure. And in a monastery, that might be enough to raise alarms. You pull the cheddar out from under your pillow, still firm, still smug-looking. You set it on your windowsill, where the breeze carries its scent just faintly into the night. Then, just as you're about to lie down, you hear a quiet knock on your door. You freeze. Another knock. You open the door slowly. No one's there. Just a small plate with another wedge of cheese. Different this time. This one smells like almonds and secrets. You don't pick it up right away. You stand there, staring at this new wedge of mystery cheese sitting on a simple wooden plate, like some kind of dairy communion offering. It's not the cheddar from last night. This one's softer, the kind that squishes a little under its own weight, pale yellow, rind like parchment left in the rain. You sniff. Apricots? No. Closer to marzipan, with a hint of old sock. Delightful. You glance up and down the hallway. Still no one. You wait. 10 seconds. 20. Then you step back into your cell and shut the door gently behind you. You bring the plate to your desk and set it down next to your copy of the Rule of St. Benedict, which now feels incredibly underqualified to handle this situation. Who's leaving you these? Why? You break off a tiny corner and press it to your tongue. It's creamy, sweet, with the tiniest aftertaste of Cinnamon? You don't hate it, but the moment it touches your throat, a warmth rises to your face. Not unpleasant, but strangely emotional. You feel suddenly like you might cry for no real reason, like those old ladies who cry at soap commercials. You lie down. You dream of a meadow, rolling green hills and fat sheep chewing clover. But over the hills, a fog rolls in. In the fog, a bell tolls, and from the mist walks a figure, robed, hooded, carrying a round of cheese the size of a millstone. You wake up gasping, heart racing. The cheese plate is gone. You sit up, look around your room. Nothing out of place, except for a faint scent of cloves and, oddly, honeycomb. You glance under your bed just to be safe. Empty. Breakfast is tense. Nobody talks. The bread is unusually stale, and Brother Thomas is chewing it like it personally insulted his mother. Brother Hugh appears with a bandage on his hand. When you ask, he mutters something about a Gouda-related accident and limps away. You decide not to press. After morning prayers, you sneak off to the scriptorium. There's something you need to check. You remember seeing a scroll last week that listed abbey infractions and their penances. A medieval HR file, essentially. You find it in the bottom drawer of the archivist's desk, behind several volumes of extremely depressing saint biographies. You scan the scroll, talking during silent hours, 2 extra fasts, improper robe folding, latrine duty, eating cheese on Wednesday. Ah, there it is. Infraction, consumption of dairy on the 4th day. Penitence, isolation, 3 days. No Eucharist, no speech, no eye contact. Harsh. You trace the ink. Someone has added a note beneath the entry, in red. Repeat offenders to be reassigned to the Beehive Abbey. You blink. Beehive Abbey? You've never heard of it. Sounds charming, but ominous. You make a mental note to look into it. Later that day, you help Brother Philip clean out the storage cellars. He hands you a lantern and leads you down a narrow stone staircase that creaks like it's remembering all the monks who fell on it over the centuries. The air grows colder, damper. The kind of damp that gets into your bones and whispers things like, "You're too soft for this life." You reach the bottom. Shelves of jars and crocks line the walls, barrels of wine and pickled vegetables, and of course, wheels of cheese. So many wheels. Stacked. Aged. Some with mold so rich it looks like it's trying to speak. You pass one that's cracked open slightly, revealing a center that's pink. Not orange. Pink. Like salmon. You lean closer, and the smell hits you like a hymn gone wrong. Sweet, rotten, floral, and something like metal. You stagger back. "That one's not for eating," Brother Philip says behind you. You hadn't heard him come up. His eyes are shadowed. "It's ceremonial." You don't ask what ceremony. You don't want to know. But he adds, "We made it when the eclipse came. Just in case." Just in case what? In case the veil thinned. You make a note to never eat eclipse cheese. That night, after supper, no cheese served suspiciously, you wander the cloister garden to clear your head. The moon is high. The fountain burbles. You spot Brother Gerald sitting alone, carving something into the stone bench. You approach. It's not words. It's a cheese. A wheel, intricately detailed. He's etched little cracks in the rind. A slice removed. Inside the slice, a face, screaming. You sit beside him, quietly. After a moment, he says, "When I was a boy, my village made sheep cheese in spring. One year, we found a wedge in the woods, just sitting on a stump, covered in flies, no mold, no smell, still fresh, no one claimed it. But my brother, he ate it." You wait. He stopped sleeping, said he could hear it, still inside him, whispering. He eventually locked himself in the root cellar. You want to ask what happened next, but you already know you don't want the answer. You go to bed early that night. You leave your window open, just in case the cheese wants to come and go on its own terms. You wake up to find 3 things. 1, your candle has burned completely down, leaving a strange, twisting soot pattern along the inside of your wall niche, almost like smoke was trying to crawl its way out. 2, the cheese plate is back, same wedge as before, unmarred, waiting. Slightly warmer than it should be, like it just returned from somewhere it had no business going. And 3, there's a note underneath it, scrawled in a shaky, ink-blotched hand. You're asking too many questions. You sit up, blink at the note, then read it again. It's not signed, just those 5 words and a tiny drawing in the bottom right corner. It looks like a cow, number closer to a goat, except the eyes are wrong, too round, too forward-facing, like they're looking directly into your soul. You flip the note over. Blank. You scan the room, walls, floor, ceiling, for any sign that someone entered. But there's nothing, and your door was still latched from the inside when you woke up, which means you suddenly don't want to finish that thought. Instead, you wrap the cheese back in a cloth napkin and stuff it in the bottom of your wardrobe. For good measure, you stack 2 volumes of Deuteronomy on top. Let's see it whisper through scripture. At morning prayers, you can't focus. Every psalm feels just slightly off tempo, like someone in the back row is singing half a beat ahead. Your eyes drift to the fresco on the chapel ceiling, the one showing St. Paul casting out a demon. Only now you notice something strange in the background. A wheel. Not a chariot, not a halo. A wheel of cheese. You squint. Maybe it's symbolic. Or maybe medieval monks were sneakier artists than they got credit for. After prayers, you find Brother Ambrose in the herbarium. He's the monastery's most reluctant conversationalist, known for answering any question with a combination of grunts, shrugs, and eye rolls. But he knows things. He once correctly diagnosed a plague outbreak in the village 3 days before symptoms showed up. You ask him about the fresco. He doesn't answer at first, just trims a stalk of rue with a knife that looks older than most abbots. Then, without looking up, he mutters, "That wasn't Paul." What? In the painting, it was Saint Gervais, patron of prisoners. They changed it when the last abbot died. You ask why they do that. He shrugs. Gervais was known for resisting temptation, cheese, wine, warmth. He died chewing bark. Sounds crunchy. Ambrose smirks. Then, they say on the 4th Wednesday of every season, his face reappears in dairy. That's why we keep the cream locked up. You want to laugh. You try to laugh. But a tiny part of your mind starts calculating the calendar. And oh joy, guess what day tomorrow is? 4th Wednesday, mid-spring. Fantastic. You decide to skip lunch, not because you're fasting, though that's the official excuse you give Brother Matthew when he offers you a questionable bowl of curdled milk soup, but because you're fairly certain your appetite is now held hostage by dairy-related dread. Instead, You sneak into the oldest part of the monastery, the crypt. Hardly anyone goes down there except during All Saints, or when someone very pious has the bad manners to die. The air smells like wax, stone, and faint regret. You walk past rows of sarcophagi, some with faded Latin inscriptions, others just marked with initials and dates. Near the back wall, there's a small alcove with a locked iron gate. Behind it, an altar. And on the altar, another wheel of cheese. You sigh. Of course there is. This one is enormous, dusty, a bit cracked on the side, but you can tell someone's been visiting it. The dust around the base is disturbed, and someone has left a small, dried sprig of rosemary beside it. A tribute, maybe, or seasoning, hard to say with monks. You whisper, mostly to yourself, "What are you?" And then, because of course this is how your day's going, the cheese moves. Not dramatically, not like it rolls off the altar and attacks you. Just a twitch. A settling. As if it was listening. You back away, slowly, carefully, never taking your eyes off the altar cheese. Once you're out of the crypt, you run into Brother Henry, who seems unusually jittery. He's carrying a basket of eggs, but one of them is cracked and leaking something green. You ask what happened. "I didn't touch them," he says. "They just did that. I think it's the milk again. It's wrong, all of it. The goats won't come near the troughs. And yesterday, I saw a rat drown itself in the cream." A moment of silence passes between you. Then he says, "Maybe we should switch to fish." You nod. Later that evening, during Vespers, you catch Brother Hugh glancing repeatedly toward the nave. His eyes are wide. His fingers keep twitching near the hem of his robe. You follow his gaze and see a small wooden box, locked, carved with symbols that resemble a cross between a dairy cow and the zodiac. It wasn't there this morning. After prayers, you linger. Once the last monk shuffles out, you approach the box. It's cool to the touch, and humming. Just faintly, like a kettle starting to boil. You hear footsteps. Brother Hugh appears, wringing his hands. "That's the reliquary," he whispers, "of Saint Lactarius." You blink. "I'm sorry." "Who?" "He lived in the 9th century, supposedly survived 40 days in the desert eating nothing but fermented camel milk. His body was never found, only the rind." "The rind?" Hugh nods solemnly. You decide it's time for bed. You light your candle, lock your door, and sleep with a Bible on your chest, just in case. You dream of wheels, endless, turning wheels of cheese stacked to the heavens. They spin slowly in the air like moons orbiting a pale planet made entirely of wax and rind. You walk among them, barefoot, the floor a squelching carpet of curds and petals. A voice calls your name, not from the sky, not from the earth, but from inside a wedge of brie the size of a coffin. You lean in. You almost answer. You wake with a start. It's still dark, and there's a low, rhythmic sound outside your door. Not footsteps. Chewing. You hold your breath. It continues, wet, slow, punctuated by occasional gulps and the faintest moan. You lie still, praying to every saint you can remember, especially the ones associated with dairy, digestion, and locked doors. Eventually, it stops. Dawn creeps in like a guilty novice. The sky outside your window is gray and sluggish. You sit up. Your chest feels heavy. Your tongue tastes faintly of Gouda, but you never opened the wardrobe. You swear it. At breakfast, the mood is brittle. Brother Thomas is missing. His usual chair sits empty, his bowl untouched. No one comments. You ask Brother Gerald where he is. Gerald stirs his porridge with unsettling aggression. He went to the beehives. In spring? He nods once. They called him. You pause. The bees? He leans closer. The cheese. You do not pursue the topic. Instead, you find yourself drifting toward the scriptorium, not to work, but to seek clarity, answers, or at the very least, distractions. You find an old copy of Monastica Naturalis, a text rarely opened because it smells like mildew and fear. You flip through the pages, inked diagrams of animal intestines, marginal notes about fermentation, a chapter titled The Mystical Lactation of Saints. Interesting. You read on. Apparently, during the 12th century, several monks claimed visions of divine figures lactating rivers of holy milk. One vision included Saint Scholastica offering cheese wheels like communion wafers to the faithful. Another monk claimed to have seen the Virgin Mary turning curd with her bare hands. Historians still argue whether these visions were symbolic, drug-induced, or caused by accidental ingestion of spoiled dairy containing hallucinogenic molds, something not uncommon when storing food in damp monastic basements for decades at a time. You pause. You remember the cellar cheese. You remember the twitch. You close the book. Outside, you hear chanting. Not the usual psalms, but something lower, older, a hum that vibrates in your teeth. You follow the sound. It leads you to the east cloister, where a group of brothers stands in a circle. In the center, a large cloth-covered object. You stay back, hidden behind a column, watching. One monk steps forward, lifts the cloth. It's a cheese. Massive, soft-rinded, glowing faintly. You blink. It shouldn't be glowing. The chanting grows louder. The monks sway slightly. One of them, Brother Stephen, begins to cry, silently, reverently. Another drops to his knees. A third lifts a wooden spoon as though it's a relic. The leader of the group, an older monk you don't recognize, his robe embroidered with what might be crescent moons or slices of camembert, says something you can't quite hear. Then he cuts a slice. The cheese pulses. You leave, quickly. Back in your cell, you throw open the wardrobe. The wedge is gone again. The books are still there. The napkin too. But the cheese vanished. You find a note in its place. This one is neater, more formal. You are being watched. Stop digging, or be digested. You close the wardrobe, then reopen it, just to check. Still gone. Still threatening. You go to see Brother Ambrose again, but he's not in the herbarium. Instead, you find him in the chapel, muttering to himself while sprinkling something that smells suspiciously like garlic across the altar. You ask what he's doing. Protective measures, he says. They're waking up. They? He doesn't answer. Instead, he hands you a small pouch. Inside, salt, rosemary, a few dried cloves, and a tiny shard of bone carved into a wedge shape. For under your pillow, he says, so your dreams don't spoil. You accept it. That night, you place the pouch beneath your pillow, say a prayer to St. Columba, not technically associated with cheese, but he feels reliable. and lie back. The dreams are quieter, but not silent. In the distance, you still hear the chewing. When you wake, the sky is bruised with an early thunderstorm, rain pattering against the stained glass like 1,000 wet fingers tapping to be let in. You pull your robe tighter. The pouch under your pillow is warm and slightly damp. You don't check why. Instead, you stumble into the corridor where the morning air smells like wet stone, burnt toast, and something sharp and sour, like someone left a wheel of raclette on a sun-warmed window ledge. The scent thickens as you reach the refectory. Inside, silence. No monks eating, no clatter of spoons, just an untouched table and a lone jug of water beating sweat onto the linen. You turn and bump into Brother Peter, who looks like he hasn't slept since Lent. He grips your shoulder and whispers, "They moved it." Moved what? The wheel. From the crypt. They brought it upstairs. Who's they? He looks around, lowers his voice further. The Wednesday order. You blink. Like the day? He nods. They meet once a week. Hidden vows, secret rites. They wear white under black and always hum when they walk. Is this a real thing? You ask. He just shivers. If you hear churning, don't follow it. You step back. He walks away, humming faintly. Half a tune, half a vibration. You suddenly realize your heart is beating in time with it. Later that day, you sneak into the kitchen to investigate. The main hearth has gone cold. Odd, since soup usually starts simmering by mid-morning. You search the pantry, baskets of apples, sacks of flour, and in the far corner, a fresh round of cheese, small this time, almost cute. Perfectly circular, dusted with ash and herbs, but there's something unsettling about it, like it's watching you, even though it doesn't have eyes. You reach out. The moment your fingers graze the rind, a spark jumps between your thumb and the wheel. Tiny, blue, sharp. You stumble back, knocking over a sack of barley. You look again. The cheese hasn't moved, but your hand tingles. Your fingers smell faintly of sage and, oddly, wet dog. You leave quickly. In the courtyard, you find Brother Hugh staring at the sky. He's barefoot. His feet are filthy, but there's a kind of serene madness in his eyes. You ask if he's all right. "They spoke to me," he says dreamily. "Who did?" He points to the clouds. "The Sisters of Way." You've officially had enough of today. You march to the library and pull down the heaviest tome you can find on monastic dietary restrictions. It's called Lacta et Lux, a theological digest, bound in cracked calfskin and suspiciously sticky. You skim for references to Wednesdays, and there it is, a chapter titled Deformitas Cassae, The Dangers of Dairy in Midweek Devotions. It details a curious ban issued by Abbot Tiberian in 1143, forbidding the consumption, storage, or active contemplation of cheese on any Wednesday due to a series of unfortunate meltings. One account reads, Brother Linus, upon slicing into a Wednesday wheel of Munster, began speaking fluent Aramaic and leaking brine from his ears. Another, a young novice reported his tongue being drawn into the rind as if suctioned. It required a spoon to retrieve. Historians still argue whether these accounts were metaphorical, medicinal side effects, or more likely, a form of disciplinary folklore to keep younger monks from hoarding snacks. But you're no longer so sure. You glance over your shoulder, just to check. Nothing. You return to your cell and find 3 things. 1. Your candle has been replaced with a fresh one. New wick, new wax, slightly off-center, as if placed in a hurry. 2. There's a damp spot on your blanket in the shape of a hoof print. 3. Your pillow smells strongly of goat. You sit very still. Then you remember something Brother Ambrose once told you, in passing, during a lecture on herbs. Goats see beyond veils. That's why their pupils are horizontal, to cut through lies. It didn't make sense at the time. Now, you're not so sure. You decide to fast until Thursday, just in case. That night, after Compline, a bell rings. Not the usual clear tone. This one is deeper, slower, almost bored. You follow the sound to the east wing, where several monks gather around a door you've never seen opened. Above it, in Old Latin, ubi coagulatio regnat, where coagulation reigns. The door creaks open. Inside, a staircase spirals downward, and the monks begin to descend. Some are humming, some are carrying bowls. One holds a candle shaped exactly like a baby goat. You hesitate, then follow. The air grows warm, humid, almost dairy-like. As you step into the chamber below, the first thing you see is the pool. Milky, still, lined with marble tiles shaped like wedges. Around it, monks sit cross-legged, eyes closed, hands open. In the center, a wheel. The same one from the crypt, but different now. Larger, alive. Its surface pulses like a sleeping animal, and the room vibrates faintly with a sound you've come to dread. Chewing. You freeze. The chewing is wet and rhythmic, like a cow slowly cud chewing at a funeral. It echoes off the stone, bounces around your ribs, and makes your toes curl involuntarily. You're not even standing in the room yet, just hovering at the doorway like a guilty breeze, and already the humidity clings to your robe like a damp apology. You try to step back, but your legs betray you. Forward. You step forward. Just 1 foot, then another. You're inside. The monks don't notice, or they do and pretend not to. Either way, their eyes remain closed, their breath synchronized. Inhale, hold, exhale, human. It sounds like a Gregorian chant got blended with a dishwasher full of overcooked noodles. The cheese in the center, your old friend, sits on a pedestal of what looks like salt-encrusted marble. A crown of bay leaves rests atop it. It is sweating. The wheel. Not in fear, but with authority. Like a gym coach made of mozzarella. You edge closer. On the wall behind the pedestal is a mural, ancient, crumbling. But the image is unmistakable. A cow, a monk, and a giant cheese wheel hovering in the air between them like a sacred relic. The monk has no eyes, just holes. A whisper creeps into your ear from nowhere. The wheel reveals, but only to those who ferment. What does that even mean? You reach into your robe pocket for your salt pouch from Brother Ambrose. It's hot, almost sizzling. You grip it tight. Across the room, a monk opens his eyes. He looks straight at you. His pupils are dilated, not round, spiral, like snails or soft cheese curls. He smiles, too wide. then hums. You bolt, out of the chamber, up the stairs, through the cloister, back to your cell. You slam the door. The chewing follows you in your mind. You lie down, heart thumping, salt pouch pressed to your chest like a teddy bear with trust issues. Your eyes flutter shut. You dream of parchment. It's morning. Sunlight spills through the window like it forgot something. You sit up slowly, your neck stiff, your breath sour. There's a scroll beside your bed. Unrolled, open to a page titled Ritus Cassius, the Ordination of the Curded. It describes a rite rarely performed where a monk consumed cheese until he reached a state of spiritual rindlessness. One passage reads, "Upon the 7th slice, his bones grew hollow, and his voice echoed with the memory of cows unborn. He knew then the secrets of Wednesday." You close the scroll. You wonder if this is still a monastery, or if you've stumbled into a dairy-themed cult with oddly specific calendar restrictions. Downstairs, you try to behave normally, attend lauds, sing the psalms, even nod at Brother Gerald, who now blinks twice between verses like a metronome possessed by lactose intolerance. In the kitchen, the butter is gone. No one speaks of it. You help prepare the bread, and you find yourself humming. Not intentionally, it just slips out. A low, vibrating note. You stop, but the others are humming too. No one looks at each other. It's a Wednesday. At midday, the abbot summons you. His quarters are cleaner than you expect, lavender-scented with neat stacks of scrolls and a jar labeled emergency pickles. He invites you to sit. You don't. He doesn't mind. "I hear," he says slowly, "you've been snooping." You say nothing. He continues, "There are rites here older than you, older than Rome, older than language." You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. "Well, at least older than cutlery." You ask him why cheese is banned on Wednesdays. He smiles, sadly. Because he's heard this question before. Because he knows you already know the answer. "There was an incident," he says, "centuries ago. A wheel, an offering, a transformation." You ask what kind. He gestures to the mural on his wall. You hadn't noticed it before. It's similar to the one in the chamber, but this time the monk is smiling, and the cheese is gone. Only a smear remains. "Brother Eligius," he whispers. "He wanted knowledge. The cheese gave it, and took everything else." You thank him and leave. Back in your cell, you find a small package wrapped in linen. Inside, a slice of that cheese. You hold it. It pulses faintly, warm like flesh. It smells of time and something else. Old rain, maybe. Maybe regret. There's a note, 3 words. Your turn now. You don't eat it. Not yet. But you don't throw it away either. That night, as you lie in bed, you hear the chewing again. Closer, always closer. It starts with a single drop of whey. You're not even sure how it gets there, just that you wake to a soft pat-pat on the floor beside your bed. You lean over, light your candle, and there it is, a tiny puddle, glistening in the glow, forming a near-perfect circle. Like a calling card, like a very polite threat. You look up at the rafters. Nothing. No leak, no overturned bowl, no goat, though you wouldn't have ruled it out. Just silence and the smell of damp wood and something distinctly cheesy. You decide to follow it. The drop, that is. Because it's not alone. Another one waits just outside your door. Then another at the bend in the hallway, and another, and another. Each drop smaller than the last, like a trail left by something running out of courage or milk, or both. You don't even bother to put on shoes. The stones are cold against your soles, grounding you in this otherwise completely insane situation. The trail ends, of course, at the kitchen. Where else? The door creaks open at your touch. Inside, dark. Too dark. Even the moonlight refuses to visit. Your candle flickers like it's trying to sneak away from you. On the main table sits a single plate, and on it, the slice from your room. Exactly the same. Still warm. Still pulsing. Still whispering. Except now it's not words. It's images. In your head. Flash visions. All mashed together. A cow giving birth in reverse. A monk floating upside down in brine. A wheel rolling uphill without touching the ground. You drop the candle. Darkness swallows the room. A hum rises, low at first, then harmonizing. They're behind you. You turn slowly. 6 monks. Hoods up, hands folded. Eyes glowing faintly. One holds a ladle. Another carries a bell. Another, just a spoon. You ask if this is about the cheese. They nod. Then the bell rings. And the humming stops. They part down the center, like curtains. Behind them, the abbot. He's wearing a robe the color of cream. Not white, not beige. Cream. Like it came from a cow with a degree in fashion. He gestures for you to approach. You do. Because you can't not. He speaks. You've been chosen. You ask for what? He lifts the spoon and draws a circle in the air. You will become the witness. You point at the slice on the table. You want me to eat that? He nods. You hesitate. A joke pops into your head, just to lighten the mood. Do I get crackers with that? No one laughs. Monks. Tough crowd. You reach out. The slice is still warm. Your fingers tingle. Your lips tremble. You lift it and eat. The taste is nothing, then everything. It's like tasting sound, the memory of thunder, the texture of lullabies. It's sweet and bitter and rich and hollow, and it burns going down, not painfully, but like it's leaving a mark. Your knees give way. The abbot catches you. You're lying on the floor now, staring up at the rafters. Except they're not rafters anymore. They're ribs. Massive, arched, bone white. The entire monastery pulses with breath. The ceiling inhales, and the walls shudder. You sit up. You're still in the kitchen. But it's brighter now, cleaner, empty. You look at your hands. They're damp with whey. But your mind is filled with something else entirely. You remember things that never happened. You know the secret name of milk. You can see Thursdays like a smell. You can hear the hoofbeats of celestial cows. And most importantly, you know why cheese is banned on Wednesdays. It's not a superstition. It's containment. You stumble to the courtyard. Everything's changed, not outwardly. The stones are the same. The fountain still trickles. Brother Gerald still blinks twice between breaths. But you see it now. The flow beneath the surface. The pulse of the wheel. It's not just cheese. It's memory. Aged, preserved, bound in rennet and silence. You walk past the chapel. The bell tolls. No one else seems to hear it. You return to your cell. The slice is gone, but the smell remains. You sit on your bed and exhale. You've joined them, not by choice, but by right. And as your eyes begin to close, you feel it again. That soft, gentle chewing, like a lullaby, like a promise. You wake before dawn. There's something odd about the silence. It isn't real. It's dense. A silence that carries weight, like someone threw a thick wool blanket over the monastery, muffling everything except your own breath. You sit up. The air feels cultured. You half expect to see mist curling out of the mortar between the stones. Outside your window, the stars are fading. One blinks at you knowingly. You get up and walk barefoot to the cloister. You're not sure why. Your feet just move, like they remember a route your brain hasn't learned yet. You notice things you never did before. The faint imprint of hooves in the stone. Were those always there? A tiny spiral symbol scratched beneath the chapel's lintel. A smell of toasted rye drifting on a breeze that doesn't exist. Brother Ambrose is already there. He doesn't speak, just hands you a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside, a wheel. Not the wheel. A different one. Younger, fresher. Still sweating, but in a hopeful way, like a nervous intern on their first day. He nods to you. Take it to the crypt. You hesitate. You hadn't even known this place had a crypt. But of course it does. You nod back. The route becomes obvious, like the monastery itself is guiding you. A hidden door behind the sacristy. A spiral staircase lit only by flickering torches. The smell is strong here. Aged cheese, stone, and a faint whiff of beeswax. You descend. The crypt is not what you expect. It's spacious, circular. Shelves upon shelves of cheese wheels, some crumbling with age, others encased in wax, and a few, just a few, floating gently off the ground like well-behaved balloons. You set the bundle down where it feels right. That's when you notice the inscriptions. Each shelf bears a name, a date, and a single Latin phrase. One reads, Oblitus ut memineret. He forgot so that others might remember. Another, Caseus est testis. The cheese bears witness. You walk slowly, reverently, through the rows. Some of these wheels are older than countries. Some glow faintly in the shadows. One has tiny bells embedded in its rind, which jingle when you pass, playfully, like it approves. Then a deeper shelf, dustier. You wipe it with your sleeve. The name engraved makes you stop cold. Your own. Your knees buckle slightly. The shelf is empty. Waiting. You back away, fast. As you reach the stairs, a monk you've never seen before blocks your path. He's wearing an apron. It's covered in ash. You ask who he is. He smiles. The affineur. Of course he is. The Affineur doesn't speak again. He just steps aside. You climb back into the monastery, heart racing, knees weak. Outside, the sun is rising. Birds are chirping. It should feel normal. But everything's changed. You notice how everyone else walks with subtle avoidance, sidestepping certain stones, never glancing at specific doorways, chewing slowly with exactly 3 chews before swallowing. You understand now. They've all seen it, been chosen, marked. You're not the first, and definitely not the last. You return to your chores, sweep the floors, wash the robes, feed the goats. One of them stares at you too long. You nod in acknowledgement. It nods back. You tell yourself it didn't actually nod. You tell yourself a lot of things, like, this is still a monastery, like, you're still just a monk, like, cheese isn't a mystical conduit of ancient memory. And then, as if to prove you wrong, Brother Gerald walks past, humming a tune you've never heard, except you have, in your dream, when the wheel sang to you in images. You hum it back without thinking. He stops, smiles, and walks on. That night, you lie in bed. There's a bell outside your window. It tolls once, faint, hollow, then again, and a third time. You rise, dress, walk. The hallway is filled with others now, monks with eyes like candle flames. They move in unison, silent, toward the courtyard. You join them. No one speaks. In the center stands a massive cauldron. It bubbles. Thick curds rise and fall inside, like thoughts fermenting. One by one, the monks reach in, take a bit, and eat. When it's your turn, your hand doesn't burn. It glides through the surface as if the cauldron were made of warm breath. You take a piece. It tastes like your first memory, and your last fear, and a Wednesday that never ends. You chew, slowly, 3 times, and swallow. You're not dreaming. You keep telling yourself that, but it's hard to be sure. The air smells like both incense and old cheese, and you're pretty sure Brother Cadwin just walked by in a robe made entirely of beeswax paper. No one else seems to notice. They just carry on, praying, scrubbing, illuminating sacred texts with the patience of saints and the hands of accountants. You return to your cell. There's a parchment waiting. Your name is written on it, in your handwriting. You don't remember writing it. Below that, a single phrase, Custos Lactis, the milk keeper. You sit, try to breathe. You're not even lactose intolerant, but your stomach tightens anyway. Later that day, Brother Ambrose finds you in the scriptorium. He sets down a thick, leather-bound book. Time to learn the rhythms, he says. You open it. Inside, a full calendar. But not a normal one. This is the monastic cheese cycle. Every day, every single one, has a dairy designation. Some are predictable. Monday is Butterfast, Thursday is Brine Rest, Sunday is the Blessed Curd. But Wednesdays? Wednesdays are blank. Just a small symbol in the corner, an eye, and beneath it, a single drop. Why the gap, you ask? Ambrose looks at you like you've just requested to use cheddar as a bookmark, because that day belongs to it. You don't ask who it is. You already know. the one that whispers in the rind, that lives beneath the crypt, that dances on the skin of the wheel when no one is looking. You've seen it in dreams now, or memories. You're no longer sure where the boundary lies. It looks like a cow at first, but taller, with too many joints, and a mouth where there shouldn't be. You flip further into the book. There are rituals, recipes, chants, all centered around controlling, taming, and sometimes just distracting the thing. One page is dedicated entirely to warding cheeses. You raise an eyebrow. Ambrose explains, some cheese isn't made to eat, some is made to remember, and some is made to keep things out. You begin to understand that slice in your cell wasn't just a snack. It was an invitation, a trial, a test of palate and spirit, and you passed. Or failed, or both. Tonight, Ambrose says, you'll stir the night vat. You're not sure if that's better or worse than what it sounds like. The night vat is in the old dairy. No one goes there anymore, except now, you. The floor is made of dark slate, and the walls sweat even when the fire is cold. It smells like milk that dreamed of being wine but woke up too soon. The vat itself is massive, black iron, bound in twisted copper. There are runes carved into the handles, and one corner has a small bowl where you're told to leave an offering. You ask what kind. Ambrose shrugs. Whatever you don't want to lose. You think for a second. Then, silently, you pull the small ribbon your sister gave you from inside your habit and lay it gently in the bowl. It curls once, then vanishes. The vat sighs. Ambrose nods. Now stir. The paddle is enormous. It takes both hands, and even then, it pulls back, like the curd is alive and trying to escape. You stir clockwise, then counter, then in the pattern of the monastery's bell tolls. With each turn, the room shifts. You see flashes of other monks, other centuries. One of them winks at you, another mouths, "Run." You do not. You keep stirring until the curd begins to sing. It's not a melody. It's more like a memory trying to speak. You hear your name in it. And the name of the one beneath. You're shaking by the time Ambrose takes the paddle. You did well, he says. It didn't bite. You're not entirely convinced. Your hands still hum with energy. That night, you dream again. This time, you're walking through a field of wheels, cheese as far as the eye can see. Some are cracked, some are glowing. One opens like a flower and releases a scream that curls into song. You step carefully. In the center stands the cow. It's taller than before. Its eyes are closed. Its mouth whispers your name in reverse. It bows. You wake with a start. Your room smells like rosemary and fear. And beneath your pillow? Another slice. Different this time. Harder. Crumbly. You bite it. It tastes like dirt and poetry and someone else's tears. You don't sleep again. The morning bells sound distant, like they're ringing from underwater or through a veil of wool. You rise anyway. That's what you do now. You rise, you breathe, you obey the calendar, even when it stops making sense. You skip breakfast. Not because you're fasting, because the cheese is back. Everywhere. In your boots, on your robe, One wheel, just sitting on your windowsill like it owns the view. You don't touch it. You never touch that kind. Today is Wednesday, the blank day. The day of the eye and the drop. You pass Brother Henricus in the hallway. He's humming again. Only this time, it's not the cheese song. It's Gregorian chant, but backwards. And when he sees you, he just grins with all his teeth. There are too many of them. You push open the chapel doors. The smell hits you first. Beeswax, salt, and the unmistakable edge of something that's gone just slightly off. Not spoiled, worse, sentient. The chapel is full. Everyone's here. All the monks. Even the dead ones. You don't know how you know, but you do. They sit in the back rows, still, watching. Some with dried milk stains on their habits, others with rinds instead of rosaries. Brother Ambrose is at the altar, arms raised. In front of him sits a platter. You already know what's on it. Not just cheese. The cheese. The one that changed the calendar. The one they fear enough to keep unnamed. It pulses gently like a thing asleep, but not dreaming. Ambrose begins the chant. It's low, almost subsonic. You don't recognize the language. Not Latin, not Greek. Something older, something that doesn't need consonants. You join in. You don't know how you know the words, but your mouth moves and the sound flows out of you like it's been waiting your whole life. As the chant rises, the cheese begins to levitate. Only slightly. Just a few inches above the plate. But enough. Enough to know that it is listening. It turns. Not physically. Cheese doesn't have joints. But its attention rotates toward you. You feel seen, naked, remembered. Then it spins. Slowly at first, then faster. A soft wind stirs in the chapel, though the windows are shut. The candles go out, except the one nearest you. That one burns blue. Brother Cadwin gasps, then giggles, then begins to float. He rises a foot into the air before vanishing with a pop, like a bubble of old milk bursting. No one screams. You're not allowed to. That's one of the rules. Ambrose claps once, hard. The spinning stops. The cheese settles. The wind dies. He turns to the monks. It is sated. Everyone exhales, almost in unison. You sag against the pew, trembling. You survived Wednesday. Barely. Back in your cell, you find a small slip of parchment tucked under your mattress. It reads, "To speak its name is to feed it." Below that, a crude drawing. A wedge, an eye, and what appears to be a key. You flip it over. A single word. Soon. You try to ignore the pounding in your head. Instead, you go to the garden. You need air and basil. The basil is strangely silent today. No bees, no breeze. Even the soil feels tense. Then, at the edge of the plot, you see it. The goat. The one from before. It's staring at you again. Only now. It's chewing. On something that looks suspiciously like a wax seal. You walk toward it slowly. It doesn't run. You kneel. It nudges your hand, then spits something out. A key. The same one from the drawing. You take it. The goat nods. You nod back. Of course you do. Back inside, you begin looking for a lock. It doesn't take long. Your desk has a drawer you've never managed to open. Not for lack of trying. It just never seemed to exist until now. You slide in the key. It turns easily. Inside, a scroll, wrapped in dried fig leaves and sealed with cheese rind. You unwrap it. The writing is old, faded, but legible. It's a record, a confession, from a monk named Brother Senric. Dated 946 AD. He writes of a wheel made during a storm, stirred by lightning, aged in the breath of a dying saint. He calls it Formagium Ultimum, the final cheese. It had eyes. It dreamed of fire. It whispered secrets to those who aged it too long. He hid it. But not well enough. The crypt wasn't built to hold it, just to delay it. You realize something chilling. The cheese you saw on the altar? It wasn't the final cheese. It was a decoy, a warning, a cousin. The real one is still down there, still aging, still waiting. You place the scroll back, carefully, and suddenly, the hallway outside your cell groans, not creaks, groans, like the stones are shifting, or breathing. You stand, because you know what this means. It's time. The final cheese is waking up, and you're the milk keeper now. You don't even put on shoes. There's no point. You already know the floor beneath the crypt won't feel like stone anymore. It will feel like something warmer, pliable, like old bark, or maybe flesh. The candle in your hand flickers as you push open the door to the undercroft. It hasn't been opened in years, maybe centuries. The hinges don't groan, they exhale, as if relieved to see you. You descend. Each step sinks slightly underfoot. The moss that lines the walls seems to recede as you approach, like it doesn't want to be involved in whatever this is. The passage twists, turns, tightens, until finally it opens, not into a chamber, into a cavern. Huge, wet, echoing with soft drips and occasional low murmurs. In the center sits the wheel, the final cheese. You expected it to glow, or at least hum, maybe float ominously. But no, it's just there, big, pale, cracked, and covered in fine blue veins that pulse very slightly if you stare too long. You approach. The air is different here. Heavy, like breathing through warm linen. Your candle flutters and dies. But you can still see. The cheese is giving off light. Diamond soy's gold, almost sacred. You kneel. Because what else do you do in the face of something that might be older than your entire language? It does not speak, but you hear it, inside your head. A voice, but more like a texture. It feels like licking parchment that's been stored in a spice cabinet. It tells you things, not in words, in flavors. You taste secrets. You taste 11th century betrayals. You taste a monk who tried to eat this thing once and was never seen again, though they did find his shoes filled with parmesan dust. Then it shifts. The rind begins to crack, slowly, with a sound like stretching leather. Something glows inside, not bright, not threatening, but infinite. You reach out. Your fingers hover a hair's breadth from the surface. You don't touch it. It touches you, or rather, It chooses you. The cavern trembles. Not violently, more like the kind of tremble you get before a sneeze. Anticipatory. And then you see it. Not with your eyes. Inside your mind. The entire history of this cheese. The cow it came from. The monk who whispered to it while it aged. The storms. The salt. The nights they prayed and prayed for it to stop growing. You see the monastery as it once was. Vibrant. Loud. Bursting with pilgrims. Then you see the Wednesday it all changed. The first time it blinked. And someone disappeared. A bishop, apparently. He deserved it. Your hands start to hum. You're being given something. Not power, not wisdom. A responsibility. You are the barrier now. The crust between worlds. The rind. And the cheese is not your enemy. It is your charge. Like a dragon kept asleep, with lullabies and cream. You nod, and it settles. The cavern calms. Somewhere above, a bell tolls 13 times. 13. A number that doesn't exist on the monastery schedule. When you return upstairs, the others are waiting. All of them. Even the ones you thought were dead. They stand in silence, then bow, not to you, to it, through you. Brother Ambrose steps forward, hands you something, a wooden spoon. Plain, simple. On the handle, a burned-in symbol, an eye, a wedge, and a door. You'll stir again next week, he says, and you understand. Wednesdays aren't a threat. They're a service. A ritual to keep balance. To remember that some creations must never be forgotten, or they start remembering us instead. That night, you sleep deeply for the first time in weeks. No dreams, no whispers, just warmth, and a faint, comforting scent of Gouda. But in the morning, a new parchment waits on your desk. It reads, "Next week, it turns 17. You don't know what that means, but you will, soon. Morning again, but it's different now. The sun filters through the monastery windows, not in streaks of light, but ribbons, soft, buttery, as if the very air has thickened. You stretch, but carefully. Your joints feel older, though you know no real time has passed. You are the milk keeper now, which means the bells sound for you. Brother Ambrose no longer leads the chant. He stepped back, content, perhaps even relieved. And the others? They look at you like you're wearing the Pope's slippers and the Holy Grail strapped to your back. No one talks about the cavern. They never do. The crypt has closed itself again, physically, spiritually, architecturally. Even the door is gone now. In its place, a perfectly smooth stone wall that smells faintly of bay leaves. You keep the key and the spoon, both tucked in your habit like they've always belonged. The days feel normal again. Mostly, but then comes Tuesday night, and you can't sleep. The cheese calls again, not with words, not even with dreams, but with a deep, bodily yearning, like craving pickles at 3 a.m. for no medical reason whatsoever. You go outside. The moon is sharp tonight, silver-edged and hanging low like it's judging your posture. You walk, past the garden, past the goat, who winks at you, by the way. Don't think we didn't notice that. to the edge of the well, the old one, dry since the plague, or maybe just ignored. But something is dripping now. A slow, deliberate plink. You lean over, and there it is. A glint of something round and waxy deep, deep down. You smile. Because now you understand. It's not the only one. The final cheese wasn't final. Just first. And they've been multiplying. Aged in silence. Fostered by silence. Guarded by silence. You drop a pebble into the well and listen to the echo. It takes longer than it should to hit the bottom. Much longer. And when it finally lands, the splash sounds like curdled milk. Back in your cell, you find another note. You don't even pretend to be surprised anymore. This one is folded into the shape of a mouse. It reads, "When it turns 17, it will want a name." Underneath, someone has scrawled a suggestion. Gorgonzolor. You laugh, then feel vaguely guilty about it. Wednesday arrives again. You're ready. You carry the spoon like a scepter, the key like a relic. You hum the chant under your breath, matching the rhythm of your footsteps. The altar is prepared. The monks are waiting. The cheese is not alone this time. Two smaller wheels sit beside it. One blue-veined and weeping gently. One dry and cracked, humming almost imperceptibly. You step forward and begin the stirring. The chant rises, but it's not the old chant. This one has flavors. You can taste the vowels, hear the rind crumble around each syllable. The cheese responds. It quivers, grows slightly, not in size. Oh no, it deepens, like a hole being dug inside itself. And then it blinks twice. Once for the world that was. Once for the world that's coming. The monks don't flinch anymore. This is normal now. This is Wednesday. And as the final note fades, you whisper the name. You don't know how you knew it, but you do. You say it once, quietly, and it settles. The room goes still. No floating monks this time. No eye-popping revelations. Just calm. Sacred stillness. You've done it. Another week sealed. Another cycle survived. You step back, bow, and walk out into the garden. The basil is blooming again. The goat brings you a napkin. It smells like fondue. You sit on the grass and look up at the sky. You think about names, about calendars, about how history is just memory soaked in time and slightly fermented. You are no longer afraid of cheese. Only Wednesdays. And not even that, really, because now you know. You are the rind. The last crust between hunger and history, and you've still got the spoon. The breeze tonight is just right, soft enough to soothe, firm enough to remind you you're still here. You lean back, let your eyelids sag. The sky stretches above you like a parchment half-written, stars punctuating the silence like little sleepy yawns. Somewhere a bell tolls, not loudly, just enough to mark the moment. You don't count the chimes. You don't need to anymore. The cheese is resting now. You are too. You breathe in through your nose, slowly, as if sipping warmth from the night itself. The earth beneath you is quiet. The basil no longer trembles. Even the goat has curled up, its tiny beard twitching with whatever dreams goats have. Your body settles as if it's remembered how to do that. A calm, deep, anchoring kind of stillness wraps itself around your bones. Everything slows. The shadows no longer feel like watchers. They feel like blankets, tucking you in with the hum of 1,000 years of quiet, fermented knowledge. And you've earned it. This pause, this deep breath, you'll wake again soon. You always do. But for now, the monastery fades into haze. The stars blur, and your thoughts soften into something like mist. You're safe. You're whole. And tomorrow can wait. Sleep well, milk keeper. The cheese will call again. But not tonight. Tonight, it dreams.